out of all of the series of unfortunate events that the Baudelaire children have experienced thus far, living in a community that does not tolerate polygamy is apparently the most unfortunate of all of these events. But we're not polygamous, Violet said mournfully. Oh, this is so sad. I don't really get
Yes.
that line. We're going to talk about it. Hello and welcome to Woeful Wednesdays. Nathan reads a series of unfortunate events. Ignore the tattoo. Again, I'm being told that this title will make sense soon enough.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I am Tyler.
Yes, I'm Nathan. This is Tyler. I have not read the series before, so I am reading it for the first time. And this is essentially a read along. If you want to follow along with us as we go through this, then you're certainly free to do so. Tyler read these books when he was a kid and really, really appreciated them and enjoyed them. And therefore, he's kind of walking me through this that I'm clearly not the right age for these books whatsoever. But what we're doing is we are essentially doing a read along and we're documenting my reaction to these books. So we are breaking each book up into three different parts. So chapters 1 to 4, 5 to 8, and then 9 to 13. This is the third video for The Bad Beginning, the first book in the series. So we are looking at chapters 9 to 13 in this episode. Again, like I say, that's such a strange line. We're going to talk about that. This whole back and
Yes.
forth of like, oh, it's too bad polygamy can't come in to save the day. Okay.
For sure.
All right. We do have
Yeah.
a sponsor for today's episode.
Yes. Yeah, I am very thankful that this sponsor exists. Because I mean, everybody remembers lawn darts, right?
Sure.
Uh, they were such a big thing. You just throw this sharp metal object into the air, and it comes down totally safe until we realized that that was not at all safe. Well, those have been banned in most places, and so Violet Baudelaire has come up with a solution for the next generation. So this is Violet Baudelaire's homemade grappling hooks, great for blindly tossing toward infants.
They sure are, Tyler. They sure are. Yeah, I'm super proud of this sponsor. This podcast is not liable should any damage come to you as a result of flinging a homemade grappling hook at an infant in a bird cage hanging from a 30-foot tower.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, folks. Well, I hope you enjoy.
Ignore the tattoo! Nathan unfortunately reads a series of unfortunate events at an unfortunate age, which in this case is being used to indicate that he is entirely too old to be reading this for the first time.
All right, so we are talking about chapters 9 to 13, the last 5 chapters in book 1 of a series of unfortunate events, The Bad Beginning. So it is your turn to do a quick plot summary, and then we'll get into our reactions to this.
Yeah, so we left our characters off with Sunny missing and the marvelous marriage, the play written by Al Funcoot coming up, and yeah, so we get to see Count Olaf point out that he has trapped their baby sister in a birdcage hanging from the 30-foot tower.
Right,
Um,
because yeah, I had that whole question of like, why doesn't she just say no? And Count
yeah.
Olaf definitely seems to have something up his sleeve because he's being quite smug about all of this. Of oh no, you figured out my plan, but he doesn't seem troubled by it. So yeah, clearly he
Yes.
had something, and that's his solution to threaten the infant.
Yeah. Yeah, and so then Violet devises a plan to try to rescue Sunny so that they can escape and I believe escape in the night. Um, and it
But she
does
doesn't tell Klaus,
right. Yes.
which seems strange to me.
Yes, and that is a fair criticism, I would say.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to get his hopes up, I think is what it
But
says,
then
but
he's going to be so unprepared to run away.
I know. Yes. But anyway, so she uses a grappling hook, which she made herself using her inventing skills in order to climb up the tower, and then is confronted with the hook-handed man. And she is then trapped in the tower. Klaus is brought up there as well. all three of them are there until the play begins. The play goes through. Violet signs the document, and then it is revealed that she has signed it with her left hand, which is not her dominant hand, and so therefore, according to Justice Strauss, it is no longer a legally binding marriage.
Yes. This community that they live in, this community, as we get that term,
Yes.
is a very strange one, including their nuptial laws. Very strange.
Absolutely. Yes, and of course, we should mention that Count Olaf and his theater troupe do escape into the night at the end, which I have a note on that. But but yeah, so they do escape, and then the Baudelaires are not able to live with Justice Strauss due to Mr. Poe being very particular with enforcing their parents' will.
Yes. Yes. Okay. You do have this. Now, I guess we might as well talk about it now. I'm presuming, I think I've picked up on this, the last image here, then I couldn't help but notice the last illustration in the book. You have a couple of snakes that are coiled around these light poles that they have outside of the theater. And then I looked at the letter to the editor that Lemony Snicket has written, and I'm presuming that this is a tease for the second book.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think every book has one of these letters to the editor, as well as this some type of subtle image, sometimes more subtle than others, within the final illustration as a tease for the next book in the series.
Okay. Gotcha. So I genuinely don't have a lot to say about these chapters. But yeah, I guess we might as well just go chronologically through this. Chronologically in terms of the plot, and starting with the first chapter that we're looking at, which is chapter 9. So lot to say because I feel like I've already discussed most of this in terms of the style of writing, especially in the first video that we did, but the first and second when we were looking at chapters 1 to 4 and then 5 to 8. And it's more of the same, but it's less intrusive throughout much of these chapters, I think, because he's trying to resolve the plot. And that's where I have said that I'm appreciating that part of it, that I thought it was going to be so stylistic with this persona of Lemony Snicket intruding in the story with all this commentary, and there's less of that than I was expecting. And I think that they're working, at least for me, best when you're getting mostly dialogue and then little dialogue tags and scene descriptions, and that's where it's working best. The little asides, most of them don't work for me, but I get why they do for a lot of people. In any case, so this is on page 105. So this is towards the beginning of chapter 9. That it's such a weird moment here. This is towards the bottom of the page, it's the second last paragraph, where Violet says she's shouting at Count Olaf because she sees that he has put her infant sister in this birdcage hanging above the tower. And then she says, "Let her go. She has done nothing to you. She is an infant." What a weird lack of contractions. Have you ever heard somebody who's angry who says, "She is an infant," not "she's an infant"? What a weird lack of contractions. And then he doesn't continue that for the rest of it. I mean, like, if you look at the next part, then like it's like, "No," Klaus cried, "don't." He doesn't say, "No, do not." And then Violet continues where she says, "Please, she's just a baby," not "she is. She's just a baby. Will do anything. Just don't harm her." You then get 3 contractions right there. And that's on page 107. So I have no idea. I don't know how his editor, like what he was thinking, what his editor was thinking, because that sure doesn't sound like,
that's
believable.
That's a very good point, and I had not picked up on that. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's true that that is very unnatural dialogue.
it's really unnatural dialogue, but it's not just that it's unnatural because I'm like, I'm fine if that's her voice, but that's not her voice. And at like the first,
Mhm.
like this is like the first thing that she says. Literally, that is the
Yeah.
first thing when she sees her sister suspended above, 30 feet of open air in this bird cage. Then let her go. She has done nothing to you. She is an infant. Please, like, use your best um, your dramatic skills. Read that to me in a way that sounds natural in the least.
All right, let me work on this. She has done nothing to you. She is an infant. That's the best I could do.
It doesn't work.
No.
Try it, folks. You cannot scream that. Like, if somebody is suspending this baby 30 feet above the air, I guarantee you, like, no matter how proper you are, even Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine would use a contraction there.
Yeah.
Can't you see how
Yeah.
angry I am? I used a contraction.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I think I have lost your audio.
How about now?
Yeah, now you're good.
Okay. So can I move on to the next one?
Sure. And do you want to give all your points and then we'll come back to mine?
Um, this one is. Let me just do the next one because most of
For
my
sure.
commentary, the rest of this one kind of fits with that, and then the rest of it they're kind of separate topics. So
Okay.
this is on page 118. I believe this is chapter 10. Yeah, towards the
Mhm.
end of chapter 10, 118. And um, so it says that. I guess I'll just read from the start of that paragraph. Eventually, using enough of the ugly clothing, Violet had a rope that was, she hoped, just over 30 feet long. She tied one end of it to the metal spider and looked at her handiwork. What she had made was called a grappling hook, which is something used for climbing up the sides of buildings, usually for a nefarious purpose. Using the metal end to hook onto something at the top of the tower, and it carries on. I love the non definition of nefarious there.
Mm. Yeah.
Out of all of the words that he defines much more simple words
That's true.
that
Yeah.
than nefarious, and he just puts nefarious in there, gives no definition because, as far as I can tell, that's the first time we're seeing that word in this book.
Yeah, I do believe so. It's interesting. It almost makes you think that perhaps he chose not to define um, I guess negative words or
I don't
I
know.
don't know. Yeah, I'd
I
have to
don't think
look
it
into
holds
that a
up.
little bit more. But
I don't know
like,
why, because he is defining everything that's like a five
right.
dollar vocabulary word, and nefarious certainly would be for this series. And I
Hmm.
just, but it proves my point that I think this usually works better when you don't provide that, when you allow the reader to do a little bit of work. Trust that
Right.
the reader is halfway intelligent, can use context clues. Even younger readers can use context clues. That is the best way to expand your vocabulary. It is not to have the word and then an immediate definition.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I like the fact that he's just expecting you're going to figure it out. I think he's
Hmm.
expecting they're going to figure it out from context.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wish that
Oh,
we saw
good
that
point.
more often because it's
Right.
118 is the first time that this really happens, and I'm like, oh, well, that was good.
Yes.
Because as soon as I saw that word, I'm like, where's the definition? I went, no definition. Oh, okay,
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And that word really does stand out
yeah.
amongst the other uh, vocabulary. So yeah.
All right, so that's all that I have for chapters 9 and 10. What do you have?
Right. Let me see. For chapter 9, I really like on page 104, where he focuses in on Violet looked over in the direction, this is the final paragraph on 104. Violet looked over in the direction of Count Olaf, but could not meet his eyes, the eyes on his face, that is. She was staring at his feet, and could see the tattooed eye that has been watching the Baudelaire orphans since their troubles had begun. So that's kind of I mean, obviously we've got a lot of ocular imagery
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
throughout this book, and it is something that will continue um, in more of the series, especially regarding that tattoo, which of course uh, is referenced in the title of this series. So,
Right.
in the title of this podcast series, that
Yes. Our
is.
booktube
um,
series.
yes. So I really like that. I think that it's very well done in its focus on that, especially, could not meet his eyes, the eyes on his face, that is. I just think that's
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
um,
that is.
uh, now, on page 108, I had a bit of a moment where we have Klaus saying, "Our sister is not a stick." And then Count Olaf goes on to explain, "A stubborn mule does not move in the direction its owner wants it to. In that way, it is like you children who insist on mucking up my plans." Um, and yeah, I think it's a good little bit of just kind of imagery, I suppose. But it does really, really point out again. I mean, I don't know if Klaus is being uh, literal here, or if he is understanding the figurative meaning of it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I do think that it's a little bit interesting that that's in there.
Y- You're
Yeah,
right. Yes, because we have had this, you know,
it brings up this idea of just, Count Olaf clearly does not think much of these children, and he thinks that they are idiotic. He like refers to
yeah,
them as as clever or smart, but essentially like not as smart as they think they are.
right.
And I think I have that tagged in another passage. But
But
uh, but yeah,
you make a great point because we do have this um, discussion about the difference between literally and figuratively, and
mhm,
then Klaus saying our sister is not a stick. You are right. Is he saying this because he's like she's literally not a stick? Because figuratively, yes, she is.
yeah,
If he understands that expression at all, then of course she is. She is
yeah,
a threat to these children to force them to do something that they don't want to do. So of course she's acting as a stick.
mhm,
So I I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah. But I do also really love the fact that, Olaf is focusing on negative enforcement rather than,
There's no
uh,
carrot.
yes, yeah. I think that that's a nice little touch that, of course, you would go
Yes.
with the, uh, yeah.
Yes.
Um, all right. Now, I believe that was it for. Oh, and then in chapter 10 on page I think this is still, yeah, page 120, where we have Violet throwing the grappling hook, clang, clang. And I love the third time that we hear the clang. The grappling hook hit the tower and fell down again, hitting Violet hard in the shoulder. One of its arms tore her nightgown and cut through her skin. Biting down on her hand to keep from crying out in pain, Violet felt the place in her shoulder where she had been struck, and it was wet with blood. Her arm throbbed in pain. I like that it is. This is a moment of really presenting the stakes here, of making it feel real. Like there is genuine danger in that, she can actually be injured. It's not like they are, yeah, they can be injured, I guess is my main point.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that as well, and it is kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, I guess they are. It's not a cartoon universe. It does show that
Yeah.
she can be injured, but at the same time, I think he's trying to have it both ways. Um, where he's he's trying to make it seem like she is so injured, but he doesn't actually say anything about the extent of her injuries. And then she's like, he makes it seem like, oh no, and then it's wet with blood, and then it throbs, but she's able to still throw the grappling hook. So clearly she didn't tear anything in terms of like muscle tissue and tendons, and then she's still able to climb and then get to the top, but then it's soaking, so then she has to like wrap it up, but then she's not losing blood. So I'm like, it does feel cartoonish to me. It like maybe not cartoonish, but it feels like such superhero logic of I'm so injured, but my injuries are only going to hold me back. They're superficial. They're only going to hold me back momentarily. Like nobody in a superhero film says, okay, I'm going to need 3 months to recover or 6 months to recover. I'm going to need surgery and then maybe a second surgery. Like there's none of that in superhero movies. It's like, oh no, I think he's dead. He's so horribly injured. And then it's like, I'll lose this battle, but I'll be back tonight and I'll be fine somehow. That's how it felt to me. But I still appreciate it better than no injury at all.
Yeah. I mean, especially for again, children's book to have.
But the stuff that I read when I was a kid was, I don't know. To me, it doesn't give enough credit to children.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just mean like the inclusion of like actually like the mention of blood, I think is something that you would typically not expect to see in children's literature. At least not modern children's literature.
Yeah, I guess. I legitimately am not particularly well read in children's lit. I don't read enough of it to be able to comment on that. But I imagine you're right. I'll go with it.
Okay.
All right, so can we move on to chapter 11?
Absolutely.
All right, so I've really only got two other things I want to talk about. So the first one is on page 124. Then you get this interesting aside by our narrator of Lemony Snicket, where it's very much he is a character in the story, and you get a little bit of his backstory where it says, Violet looked around the dim and messy room. I'm certain that over the course of your own life, you've noticed that people's rooms reflect their personalities. In my room, for instance, I have gathered a collection of objects that are important to me, including a dusty accordion on which I can play a few sad songs, a large bundle of notes on the activities of the Baudelaire orphans, and a blurry photograph taken a very long time ago of a woman whose name is Beatrice. These are items that are all very precious and dear to me. And then he returns to his main story. The tower room held objects that were very dear and precious to Count Olaf. So this is why I'm trying to make it very clear that this is not Lemony Snicket writing these books. This is Daniel Handler taking on the persona of Lemony Snicket, and Lemony Snicket is essentially a character in this series. Lemony Snicket occupies the universe that the Baudelaire children are living within, but this is not our universe. This is a different world. This community does not exist in our plane of existence.
Yes.
And Lemony Snicket is part of that world. So it's an interesting little thing of getting a little bit of his story, but just that technique of he's playing a character within the stories.
Yes. Yeah, no, and I have the exact same point marked. I love that little aside. Interesting fact is that Daniel Handler actually does play accordion. So this could very well also describe his own living quarters.
You think he's got a blurry photograph of a woman whose name is Beatrice who's dead?
I don't know about that, but
yeah, but
it would be weird if he did. But
yeah, no, I hear you. I don't know. Again, I know that I am not the ideal reader for this series whatsoever, but I insist. I'm pretty convinced that even if I was like the appropriate age when I first read these, I mean, these were written when I was like, they started when I was 15, so I was already too old. So it's not like I just missed them when I was a kid. And I don't think I would have liked them. Like even that cutesy little thing, I would have been like, you're lying. this is fake.
Right.
Like, I want the real writer. I don't want this persona in my story. But I get why it's whimsical and charming. I get the technique. It's whether the technique is working for you or not on a personal level. But I'm saying objectively, like as a teacher, I can say, here's the technique, here's the effect of it. Now, whether that effect, suits your particular interest in literature or not, in narrative devices, is a personal question.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I wanted to get into, it starts, I guess it really is in chapter 11, but I think I want to save that for the end. So let's go over the rest of your notes.
Okay. For chapter 11 or just in general?
The rest of the book, because I really have nothing else to say aside from my comments about chapter 11.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I was just trying to figure out where exactly I had this pinned. Oh, yes. We do have on page 142 in chapter 12, in the first very long paragraph, then we do have Klaus said he soon realized that this play must have been chosen merely as an excuse for Olaf's evil plan and not for its entertainment value. And I really actually enjoy that because, again, it goes back to the fact that Count Olaf literally did just write this himself.
Right.
So I like that little hint toward that. Then on page 148, oh my goodness, this moment, where Klaus says, "First let Sunny go," Klaus burst out. "You promised to let her go." "Where is Sunny?" Mr. Poe asked. I love it. Mr. Poe is so oblivious that he didn't even notice one of the Baudelaires has not been at this performance. He didn't even think to ask about Sunny prior to this.
It's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah.
That point, I think, more than any other, just shows how terrible Mr. Poe is in caring for these orphans.
Right.
And then, oh yes, on page 153, we get a little bit of additional information about Lemony Snicket in the first paragraph there. He says, and a town not too far from where you live has a law that bars me from coming within 5 miles of its borders. So
yes. Sorry, what page is that on?
On page 153. Within the top paragraph there.
Yeah, I remember that part.
Yeah, so I really love those moments of Lemony Snicket describing, these little details about himself that just hint at his past and, who is he really? Yeah, I just really enjoy that.
Yeah, well, see, that's perfect because you're exactly the kind of reader that these were written for. I hate it.
Right.
I hate it so much. It's so dumb. Oh, did you do something wrong? Oh, do you have a restraining order? Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't have a problem if you like it. I get it. I'm not saying that it's a bad technique. Like for anybody who's watching this, and I presume that most people who are going to be watching this are people who enjoy the series. If you enjoy it, then great. I'm saying I get the technique and it's fine. I don't have an issue with the technique. It's just it's not to my taste.
Right. Yeah. All right. On page 159, then we get. So this is an interesting point where it says, like, this is Lemony Snicket's writing here, where he says in the second paragraph, maybe it can the way down the block, they could see a long black car driving away into the night. Maybe it contained Count Olaf and his associates. Maybe it didn't. But in any case, it turned a corner and disappeared into the dark city as the children watched without a word. Now, it's a bit frustrating to me because then on page 161, then he answers that question clearly. Let me see. The Baudelaire in the final paragraph there. The Baudelaire orphans piled into the back seat and peered out of the back window at Justice Strauss, who was crying and waving to them. Ahead of them were the darkened streets where Count Olaf had escaped to plan more treachery. So it seems like a little bit of a, I don't know, just a little odd that between those two pages.
Oh, okay. Great. Yes. Okay. I didn't even catch this when I was reading it. You're absolutely right, because what he's doing is he is alternating here between limited omniscient and omniscient narration, and he is limiting his narration, his omniscience, on page 159, where he's saying, "I don't know. I can't tell." And that doesn't seem to be like a close point of view that he's taking to match these children, because he's not doing that. He's acting as a third person limited omniscient character, but then he gains omniscience on page 161, literally 2 pages later. And that is a great point, because now he does know what has happened, that Count Olaf had escaped to plan more treachery. So it's like saying, well, we can't see that part of the story. And then 2 pages later, well, I can see it, and here's what's happening. And then that alternating between the two is inconsistent in a narrative point of view, as far as that's not good.
Right.
Straight up, that's not good. No editor, no literary agent, no writer, and no careful reader will say that your narrator should do that, because it's confusing for the reader.
Absolutely. And I think that either one of those passages is fine on its own.
Right. But you can't have both.
No.
You can't. Absolutely. That is a great point, because that's a very fair critique. And I would say I genuinely don't think that that's really on Daniel Handler. It is, because it does ultimately fall to the writer, but his editor should have caught that.
Absolutely.
Editors, because this is not like, I'm sure there is not just one single person who acted as the editor for this. There would have been a couple at the very least. Plus, I'm presuming that he was agented when he did this, and his agent should have caught that. Beta readers should have caught that. That just should not be there. It shouldn't. That's a great point. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am willing to point out flaws when I see them.
and I think you should. Okay. So is that really all that you had to say?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I would also like to. We already kind of mentioned the letter to the editor, and I feel like I'm more torn on their inclusion now than I was when I was first reading them. Just because it describes so much of what happens in the next book, and it feels a little frustrating to get that much information about the next book when we just really needed a tease.
Yes. Yeah, I think even just having just that last illustration, the illustration by, who is the illustrator for this?
Brett Hellquist.
Yeah, Brett Hellquist. So Brett Hellquist's illustration on page 163, I think, is sufficient. You've got these, as I looked at it, I went, oh, what's up with those snakes? There was no discussion of that in the text, so that's got to be some kind of tease about something that's going to happen in the next one. And then I looked at the next book and I went, oh, the reptile room. Okay. Okay, that kind of points to, yes, these snakes are going to play some kind of role in the next book. That's all that was necessary. That's what I'm saying, is I think some of this stuff that Handler is doing that I think he thinks is really whimsical, I think sometimes it's working and sometimes it's not. That if you're going to take on this much of a voice as a narrator, then and I genuinely think this is why we have seen this style of narration go out of vogue in publishing, because it's hard to have your narrator also be a character and have a voice, because then the issue is if readers don't like the character of the narrator himself or herself, they're not going to like the book at all. It's a whole,
Right.
because that's the person telling you the entire story. It's one thing if you don't like one of the characters in a book, even if you just, it's not just that they're a bad character, like they're evil or villainous. It's that I don't like them. I don't like their dialogue. I don't like their point of
Yeah.
view on life or whatever else. But it's a single character or maybe two characters in a big book. But if you don't like the narrator and the narrator has got a personality, then you're not going to like the entire series, or at least the entire book, even if it's not a series. And I'm saying the more personality he takes on and the stronger his personality is as Lemony Snicket, the greater the risk is for people to dislike him as a narrator, but also you get the reward of lots and lots of people will like him as a
Right.
narrator.
Yeah.
It's
And I think that it's, especially because this is the first in the series, then it's particularly risky, right?
Yes,
That
agreed.
if we had gradually gotten to know Lemony Snicket, then it would have been fine. Um,
I agree.
and I think that again, with those little hints that we get, I think that those are sufficient.
Yeah.
But it's too much too
I
soon.
I do think I agree. I think that's it. It's not even that I dislike having them in there. It's just it's too much. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I don't mind it when it's peppered in, but it's
Mhm.
like there's a couple parts here where it's like there goes
Yeah.
the entire pepper shaker into the dish, you know? It's not
Yeah.
just a little bit of who Lemony Snicket is. It's like that was a giant dump of Lemony Snicket into this. Um,
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is a broader discussion that I want to have. So this is
Mhm.
basically focusing in on chapter 11. Uh, now, and it is something that thematically is coming up, well, subtextually, but even it's still pretty on the surface of the text. Okay, I want to make this clear first. I want to make a little bit of a disclaimer. Now,
Yeah.
when I was getting my master's in English, then I remember we were talking. I forget what the book was that we were talking about, but one of my professors made it very clear because we were pointing out some stuff that we were noticing on a subtextual level. So it's not overt in the text, but we're saying, yeah, but if you really read into it, look at what's going on here. And then my professor said, okay, here's the thing. And I thought it was one of the most insightful things I've heard from one of my professors. He said, as grad students and academics, like professors within the field of English, we have specifically been trained and we've been honing our skills to be suspicious readers. And what that means is we carefully examine texts that we're reading to look for stuff that sticks out that other people, but it's subtle. So, like those subtle little things where you go, that's inconsistent, that doesn't fit. Whoa, that's a strange choice of diction in that little instance there. What does that mean? And then we go, here's what it means. And then we pull out just a tiny little part, and he's going, now, the reason why we do this is because we spend so much time reading literary fiction, which is written for um, the most sophisticated, intelligent, intellectual readers. Not always, but I'm saying this is generally speaking what we're talking about when we look at the classics. These were written for educated audiences to pay very, very close attention to the text. So there's subtle things that authors will put into the text in order to um, encode them into the text, and then careful readers will decode them from the text and then say most people will miss it, but here's what this book is really about. And this is where you get the accusation that people will make against English teachers saying your high school English teacher reads too much into the text, that like they're thinking too deeply about it, and like, oh, like, the idea of, oh, well, the curtains were red to symbolize, this and this and this. And then like some people would be like, no, they were just red. And then the author's like, I just like red, right? That whole
Right.
idea. So he's saying it's tough because we're in this tough position because on the one hand, we're very skilled at catching things that you go, ooh, whether the author was aware of it or not, maybe on some subconscious level, they've now encoded something into the text that most people will miss, but we're great at catching it and pulling it out. And then everybody else looks at it and goes, whoa, look at what this is about. But he's saying sometimes we're right, but sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we're just being too suspicious. So this is my way of saying I am aware that I'm being too suspicious here, and I'm willing to let this go. Okay? But boy, is this book really interested in pedophilia.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm saying that Daniel Handler's not doing it. The multiple mentions of Violet being so pretty, I think are meant on the surface to just be, yes, she's a pretty girl and he is a handsome young man, right? That it's not supposed to be anything upsetting or creepy, but I'm telling you, this stuff is really creepy because it comes up multiple times. First of all, the fact that Olaf wants to marry her, that there is this overt mention of the fact that she is underage, but that as her guardian, he's allowed to do this, and that he is going to be her father marrying his daughter, and that he can give permission for this. It is this bizarre instance of some kind of examination of incest mixed with pedophilia. And you say, but I don't think that he's doing this to be like, look at how evil he's being, that he is this playing this bizarre perverted form of this incestuous relationship or quasi-incestuous relationship with Violet, with his guardian child, but I'm your father, you're my daughter, blah blah blah, and that she's underage. That's supposed to be, no, I just want the money. I just want the money. Then it's like, then why are you talking about the wedding night? Then why are you talking about how pretty she is and how you want to have time with her and how you're going to take care of her? Why would you mention these things if you just wanted the money? Why wouldn't you say, I'm going to get the money and then all three of you children are going to die the way or you're going to suffer, that he's going to take care of her. And so on page 126, and this is where it's just like, I don't know how you can avoid this interpretation, because it's not even an interpretation. So I'm saying it's not even subtext. So when she does, ultimately, Violet is throwing the grappling hook. She gets it all the way up onto the tower. The hook-handed man, it ultimately, caught his hook. He pulls her up. She says it was a grappling hook. The hook-handed man said into the walkie-talkie, I don't know, boss, because he's talking into the walkie-talkie here. I don't know, boss. Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Of course I understand. She's yours. Yes, boss. Count Olaf is very displeased with his bride. And then it continues on. And I know that he mentions her pretty face as well.
Yes, on page 124. Yeah. And then he says, have a seat. And then she says, what are you going to do with me? And then the hook-handed man says, I said, have a seat, and pushed her into a chair.
Yeah. I was just thinking how much I wanted to see your pretty face. Have a seat. And then you get the conversation of, oh, yeah, no, I know, she's yours. I'm not allowed to have her in what way? What was the implication there? That this guy's going to marry her to get the money, but he doesn't care about Violet? Or that he wants her to be his bride so that way he can enjoy her from this lascivious nature, like to sexually assault her, sexually assault a minor. I'm going, look, and I said this at the beginning, I'm like, these books I don't like, because they're children's books, then they're not going to be dark enough for me, because I really, really like dark themes. But I'm going, I don't think that this is supposed to be a theme, but it's right there. Like, I don't think that this is intentional, that children are supposed to read this and go, oh, Olaf wants to sexually abuse her by marrying her, and that it's like, it's supposed to be just, he just wants the money, like a cartoon. But I'm going, but this doesn't read cartoonish. This reads as a disgusting old man who wants to assault her.
Yeah. So it is, I think, very, very clear that there is something there. And then again, even with the mention of polygamists later.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. That's the next note that I have. It's about polygamy.
Yeah. And so if you look at Daniel Handler's other work, then his first was The Basic Eight, which was rejected by many publishers for its subject matter and tone, a dark view on a teenage girl's life. Now, this is according to Wikipedia, but
yes.
But yeah, Handler claims that the novel was rejected 37 times before finally being published in 1998. Then he also had, let me double check. In April 2005, Handler published Adverbs, a collection of short stories that he says are, quote, about love. Um, Handler's novel We Are Pirates is about a modern age pirate who, quote, wants to be an old fashioned kind of pirate. And his most recent novel, All the Dirty Parts, was published in May 2017 and, quote, takes the blunt and constant presence of a male teen's sexuality and considers it with utmost seriousness. So I think that this.
So he's definitely interested in the themes of the sexuality of adolescence.
Yes. Yeah. So I would say that those are things that, I would have hoped that the editor would probably point out and be like, maybe don't include these things in this book. But and I had heard a rumor a long time ago, and I haven't substantiated it in any way, but that he was convinced to publish the series of unfortunate events under the name Lemony Snicket because of his other works, in order to distance himself from them, to make these, more acceptable for example, parents who wouldn't look into it enough. So, yeah. It's worth pointing out, and I don't want to say anything, more specific than that, but I think that it is.
I'm just treating the text on its surface. I don't understand. Like, to me, there's nothing to me even remotely dark or controversial about anything else in this book except for that. The rest of it is like, oh, okay, the parents die, but it's like, this is all fiction. This is all fiction, right? The parents die. You get this Count Olaf. He's got these nefarious schemes to, acquire their wealth and all of this stuff, right? Then it's like, that's fine. Oh, no, the baby's in danger. It's a fictional baby. It's all fine. But that, and that it's not just in this one text that he is interested in exploring the sexuality of underage people.
Yes.
I mean, folks, you can comment below, because I don't even know what to do with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think he wanted to write a children's book series. And
he seems interested in a question that I think that I'm not interested in exploring. I don't want to read about some creepy old dude who wants to marry a 14-year-old. Like, not just for the money. For the money, fine. But then putting in these little references, like, where it's like, this is just a scheme to be able to acquire the wealth. But it's like, but if there's like these other benefits that he's going to get, I don't like sexual assault, especially of a minor, being a plot device. And I don't understand how it's in the text like this, that to me it's so on the surface. And these books are not controversial. Like, I haven't heard that controversy with these books. And certainly in the, the way Harry Potter in many ways has been scrutinized, and J.K. Rowling cannot stay out of the headlines when she continues to like comment one way or the other on different things. Then and especially sexual politics, like, it's coming up. But I mean, like, she's gotten in trouble with things like from she's offending both sides of the political spectrum, but it's like the sexuality of Dumbledore, for instance, right? Then it's like, but he's an adult character in these books, and there's no indication at all of like any kind of sexual abuse of minors or anything like this. But I'm like, these seem like am I missing something? Because I don't get it. Because I look at this and I'm like, you know how you're coming across, right? You know what the implication is here, right? Like, is this just completely, are you so oblivious that you don't understand by commenting on Violet being pretty and, glad to see your pretty face, and I understand that she's yours, that all of these little comments, that they end up having some implications for suspicious readers that
Mhm.
legitimately make me not want to read these books at all? Like,
Right.
I
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now, as far as I remember, then it's not something that that comes up ever again. It's just in this first novel.
Okay,
Um,
good. Because
so
legitimately, if it continued on that, then I would stop
yeah,
because I'm not interested in reading about that. Uh,
yeah,
but okay. But yeah, the other part too is this whole discussion of polygamy, and even the way Lemony Snicket is describing this. This is on page 130 to 131. Then it says, so it starts with Klaus saying, but we don't have any kerosene, talking about, throwing Molotov cocktails out the window to be able to attract attention. So, but we don't have any kerosene, Klaus said mournfully, right? Oh, like we're mourning this. Oh, it's like the loss of a loved one. They're silent for several hours. Several hours.
yeah.
Okay, sure. Um, if we were polygamous, Klaus said, Count Olaf's marriage plan wouldn't work. What are polygamists? Violet asked. Polygamists are people who marry more than one person, Klaus explained. In this community, polygamists are breaking the law even if they've married in the presence of a judge with the statement of I do and the signed document in their own hand. I read it here in nuptial laws. But we're not polygamists, Violet said mournfully. They were silent for several more hours. Okay, not only is this discussion of polygamy completely bizarre, it makes no sense, this whole discussion of in our community. The key word here for a suspicious reader is if we were polygamists,
Yeah.
Count Olaf's marriage plan wouldn't work. Not like, what do you mean, like we?
Not if
Who?
he or
Yes, not
yeah,
if Count Olaf was a polygamist, because that's how we refer to people. We'll say
yeah.
he is a polygamist, she is a polygamist, but we won't say, oh, because there's an instance of polygamy in our town is polygamous.
Hmm.
Right? It's
Yeah.
it's the worst word possible, and I don't understand how a skilled professional writer can include that word, that it got past editors and then it goes to the final copy, if that's not intentional, to say, and they're mourning this, that,
Right.
oh, our world would be so much better if we in this community could all marry. So it's like, wait a second, literally, like, what is it, 4 pages, 3 pages before this, then the hook-handed man is upset that he can't have Violet because she can only belong to Olaf. But is this saying in an ideal community, it would be best if the hook-handed man and Olaf could both marry her, thus nullifying his right to be able to acquire their fortune, but polygamy would be so much better than a monogamous marriage? Like,
Yeah. It is a it is a very troubling section, and it is one that I try to just skip past because it just it doesn't it goes nowhere. It has no other
it's the
meaning
most
in this.
bizarre thing ever. It's the like
Yeah.
why that comes up. Klaus has been sitting there for hours, and that's the first thing that he says.
Yeah.
Imagine this. Folks, please don't ever try this. Please never, ever, ever try this. But sit in a room with somebody for like 3 hours, 4 hours, don't say a word, and then just say, if we were polygamists, start a sentence with that after sitting in a room with somebody for hours. And like, better yet, a sibling. This is
Yeah.
disgusting. I'm just like, you know what I mean? I just want like Violet to grab something and just like clang Klaus in the head so hard, like grab like a like the metal shuffle for like a fireplace or whatever, and just like he's like, if we were polygamous, bong. Just stop right there. You said too much already. That's what I want to do with Daniel Handler. I literally want to hit him multiple times in this, going, stop. This is disgusting. Please stop pursuing this. Don't even mention this, because this is not coming across as cutesy and whimsical and like, ha ha ha, what a jokey little thing. This is like, these books are so quirky. I'm like, this is not quirky. This is like vile. Like, she's 14. The way she's being described, what seems to be the undertones here of marrying her off, seemingly to enjoy her physical body, it sure seems to be an implication there. And then saying, and what would be even better is if she could be married to multiple people. I can't get around that, other than that is just, it's a vile thing to include as some kind of quirky plot device or piece of dialogue. I hate it. I hate it so much, and I literally would just abandon doing this read through if that kind of thing continues. I genuinely, though, because I don't know these books, I don't know Daniel Handler, I haven't read his other stuff. So for people who do know this, please comment below. And if this is a thing, if there is a controversy with this, then I want to know. And if not, what the hell do you do with these passages? Like, I'm not trying to start something. I'm not trying to, like, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to through this that people are like, oh my goodness, now we all have to be super angry. I'm going, how is it possible that they've sold millions and millions and millions of copies and I haven't heard of this as a controversy? Because this is, whether you're on one side or the other of, like, one side like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or the other side of this is awful, there should still be a controversy. But I haven't even heard a controversy, because they, like, literally, have done a movie, and now they just did a Netflix series of this, which tells me that these books are still beloved, and I don't get it.
Yeah. As far as I recall, there's no mention of polygamy in either the movie or the Netflix series. So
okay, they did not include that passage, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, for anybody who's read his other stuff, because the stuff that you said, like the little summaries that you mentioned, and that they've kind of controversial, as far as subject matter and that particular interest that he seems to have. If somebody can comment on that, on it, does it not just seem like super bizarre? Does this not just seem like these were written in the 21st century, published by a traditional publisher in the 21st century? I'm like, it's one thing if you're reading like an 18th century novel, a 19th century novel, and you're like, whoo, that doesn't meet our standard anymore. I'm going, these are pretty close to being contemporary books. 21st century. I mean, I guess this one is 1999, so 20th century to be fair, but the rest of the series, seriously, people, I'm interested. This discussion was like this last part of the book was, I was not expecting that.
Right.
I was not expecting that whatsoever.
Yeah, it is such an odd inclusion, and I just, I think, like you, I just don't really want to talk about it. I don't want to say.
I know that's my thing. It's like I because what I think about it means, like, has really bad implications for him.
Yeah.
So I'm going, okay, what I now am suspicious of seems pretty awful, and it would be great if, like, that just wasn't included, so my mind wouldn't be going there. I don't like my mind going to the places that it's going, what the hell were you thinking? Like, because I can't look at that and I don't see it as being fun, cutesy, quirky, a little, like, offbeat, moments of dialogue or plot devices. I can't see a justification for this whatsoever. It seems I can't see any good reason to include it, is what I'm saying. I can only think of bad reasons to include it. And I don't get the defense of it. I just don't.
Yeah, so agreed. So hopefully book 2 will be better.
Yeah, I sure
and
hope
I
so.
I do honestly feel that the first book is the worst in the series.
Uh-huh.
It's not a great start to it, and I think that it is, other than this stuff that we've just been talking
Right,
about,
right.
it's just to establish characters and general predicament.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into a little bit of the formula of the next few books, starting with book 2.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see thoughts on that are, particularly with their new guardian.
Right. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I think we certainly opened up some like pretty serious space for discussions here. Uh, yeah, I don't even think I have to encourage it any more than I already have. But
Yeah.
I want some feedback because I don't know what else to do with this. I literally am at a loss for words looking at this. Um,
Yeah.
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 All right.
I'm genuinely happy that you brought it up though, because it was something that like I didn't want to, really bring up, because it's just something where it's like, am I reading too much into this?
No, you're not. That's what I'm saying. Is that I'm going.
Yeah.
It's not subtext. It's not in the subtext. It's on
Yeah.
the surface. That if I brought this up in any English department, in not even in a graduate program, just in undergrad, there's no way a careful reader is not catching that, going, "This is the creepiest thing ever."
Yeah.
I don't get how you look at that and not think it's. That's what I'm saying. I tried so hard to say I'm just being overly suspicious, and these are just bad instances of, like, it's a bad word of having that word pretty in there. There's a couple of like, just is that really the way you wanted to phrase it? But then hearing about some of the other stuff that he has written doesn't help his case whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to do with it other than to say, well, I don't like that. Um,
Yeah.
I just don't. The thing that puzzles me more than anything else is, and because I'm fairly involved with publishing, I don't get how this got published in its current state. I
I
don't
agree.
get it. I
Yeah.
don't get it. Um,
And the fact that it hasn't even been, uh, for lack of a better word, corrected in any
to
additional.
have a revised edition of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because your edition is, I don't know what year that came out, but a number of years after the original printing.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's still unaltered as far as I know.
Yeah, as far as I can tell. Yeah, I'm not easily catching it, but it's got the image from the Jim Carrey version of the film. So whenever that came out, so it's
Hmm.
after that at the very least.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, we'll wrap this up and then we'll move on to book 2. But yeah, I will abandon this if I'm catching more stuff like that.
Yeah, that is completely understandable.
Yeah. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed somehow. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
I
Ignore the tattoo! A phrase here which means like, comment, subscribe, and share this podcast across the web. That may seem like a strange definition, but in this context, it is entirely accurate.